But Fraser's been busy building something in Minecraft. Do you want to tell us what this is? I haven't seen this before myself.
Yeah, so last week we talked about the PAD model for mapping emotions. So that is to do with valence, which is like the pleasure, whether it's pleasurable or not, arousal, which is, how sort of exciting it is, and then dominance, which was something new that we were looking
Yeah,
at last week. The week
yeah,
before, we were looking at a model that just used valence and arousal.
yep.
And so I really struggled. I have very poor mental imagery. My Apple is non-existent. And so
So your
I've
apple
used
is
Minecraft.
non-existent? What do you mean your
Oh,
apple?
have you done the test for how well you can picture, like how good your mental image is? You're
Mm.
meant to like picture an apple, and then they asked like, what color is the apple? Does it have a leaf on its stem, or all of those sorts of questions.
Oh, okay. No, no, never done that. Never heard of that one. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's gone around. It comes around sort of cyclically on the
Okay.
internet as people discover that some people can vividly imagine things and some people can't. But yeah, I fall into the can't category. So I've used
Interesting.
Minecraft before as a quick prototyping tool
Right.
for level
Okay.
design. Because I mean,
Why
I've
not?
grown up with it,
Sure.
and yeah,
Yeah. Use the tool you know.
exactly. And
Absolutely.
so,
Who's visiting us? Who is this? Who's this
oh, that's just a
person with?
wandering trader. You can. There's a lot of things you can do in Minecraft. You can't stop them from spawning.
Okay.
um, but yeah, so I took the 3D model, I took the emotional model and used it in this 3D space. So down in this corner, we've got our negatives. Um, I, fa- I found out that when we were looking at the diagrams from Wikipedia, they actually
Mhm.
put positive valence in this corner, and so it was like half mirrored, and that really bothered me. So I made it make more sense in terms of a graph. So yeah,
Mm.
negatives in this bottom corner represented by the black,
Yep.
and then in the top it's all the positives.
Right.
Um, so I also put some signs on here for the emotions that they've classified in the model.
Right.
So we can see in the bottom the low valence, low arousal, low control. We have depression,
Yep.
and then the same low arousal, low valence, but high we have contempt.
Oh, interesting. Contempt. Okay.
Um, and then on the far side, so the complete opposite of depression, they list excitement.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I've mapped the other ones in here, and I've also tried to sort of gradient it. So going down the sort of neutral middle, we've got our brightest, a lighter grey, a darker grey, down to black in the bottom.
Okay.
Just sort of that familiarity of the RGB sort of color space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. So hang on. So let's go back to excitement because I'm kind of interested.
mhm.
I'm excited to. So this is sort of high on everything. Is that kind of correct? So we got
Yeah.
high arousal, high pleasure, and high dominance.
hmm
Right. What's so if you go down in the dominance, what's is there one listed?
Yeah, so one below we
So
got
there's
joy,
joy.
and then
Okay.
they didn't actually list any for minimal.
Right.
Um,
So this is something I'm
so
really interested in exploring a little bit more to find out. I did a little bit of research to see if I could sort of find anything that did map emotions to each of these, but I haven't found anything as yet. So
mm,
maybe that's a little bit. Maybe I'm being a little bit optimistic. Maybe that's
yeah,
not quite how it works. I'm not sure.
I was hoping to add some more, but without going into reading full like papers and studies, couldn't seem to
I
find
almost
anything.
emailed you one, Fraser. I thought, oh, Fraser's really enjoyed it. Oh, I love
um,
reading. I love reading academic papers. They're just so wonderful. So,
I am not a very good reader, so I've
oh
been
wow. Well,
I've
you'd
been
love academic
working
papers then.
on this 300-page book called Wayfinding for about 2 years, and I'm
Okay.
just now within the last 10 pages, so that'll probably take me another 2 weeks.
Right. Right. So one page a day.
I
Nice.
suppose it's not a bad goal.
Yeah.
Somewhere
Yeah.
to start.
You get through. You get through. You grind through. Now, one thing is there anything else you want to show us on here? Because I want to mention something as
I
well. But
think the only thing that comes to my mind, and from building this in a 3D representation, is I sort of found this dominance axis to kind of be, at least in my mind, quite poorly defined.
Yeah.
And I know last week we talked about maybe using that to sort of represent the player's agency. And I think after sort of coming up with this, like, and I tried thinking about, like over here where we've got excitement and then joy, and then it's left blank for us. I was trying to
Yeah.
think like what is this emotion down here, and I just couldn't quite figure it out for myself. So
So it's
I
very
kind of
positive. So it's very positive and highly aroused, but with
yeah,
no agency.
but with no agency.
That's almost like, sort of being a quadriplegic and very happy and excited, but
I mean,
not able to
even
do
then,
anything.
like, if your mind is functioning, I feel like the human mind is to seek out those situations, right? Like, you're looking for those pleasurable arousal sort of emotions, and excitement makes sense if you're seeking it. But I'm like, I don't know what that means to not be seeking it. Like, you're just passively having a blast. Like, I don't know. I don't know where that maps. And so I sort of started to feel, by the end of building all these and mapping the listed emotions, I felt myself being drawn back to that two-dimensional one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was looking at it earlier and just thinking, like, well, if I'm experiencing, or the player's experiencing this emotion, how does changing their agency and their control over the situation pull them through that circular model? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe if some of these were more listed, I might find it more useful. But after going through this exercise, I think I'll probably stick with the two-dimensional.
I would suggest there are very few models that are perfect.
Mm.
Most of them are kind of like tools to give you a bit of an idea of how to do something. But to me, it kind of seems like this model doesn't necessarily translate in that way. I don't think that means it's not useful, because I think thinking about it as agency, is not a bad way to go. Because I think from a game design point of view, that is actually really helpful. So putting someone, like in an unpleasant, highly agitated state and giving them no agency, fear, aggravation, maybe even rage quit. So I think it allows us to understand different states of the player, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is a perfect model for the emotional state of the player. But I still think it's quite useful, and I think it's something that could be very useful in just understanding what's happening within the game world, particularly that agency, because I think the sort of arousal and pleasure can be, we can, I think, map that very much on the sort of aesthetic side of the game. So the story, the music, the art, and then comparing the agency, I think is a very interesting way to sort of look at games themselves. So it may not be perfect, but I think it could be useful.
Mm. Yeah, I agree, definitely.
So something, we did get a comment on the video that I put out about the emotion. It was interesting. So I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying that all of the sort of, I can't remember, was it all the bad experiences they've had in games is when these things go to extremes. I thought, that's quite interesting. So it's like, even extreme. If you think of excitement, if you get too excited, you can you can lead to a heart attack, or you can actually damage your health. So if you go to an extreme, obviously depression, being an extreme there as well. So I was kind of thinking that maybe that's another thing we're looking at, is that from a game design point of view, we're trying to keep within a certain range of these dimensions. So you don't necessarily want to pull someone too far out, because then you get things like rage quit, or boredom. So you think of mastery, you want things to be a certain difficult to a certain degree. If they're too easy, then you get bored. If they're too hard, then you're likely to quit because it's just boring. Sorry, no, it's just too frustrating. The other ones. So I think it's a very interesting way of understanding the player's state within the game over time. I guess that's kind of what I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's a really good comment, and I like the idea. I feel like talking about it as like pushing them to the extremes is maybe a little closed, because it's hard for me to sort of imagine, like you said, like there's if you are overexcited, if you're pushing excitement to the extreme, the emotion isn't heart attack, right? That's a circumstance of being in that heightened state.
Yeah.
So I almost wonder if you could map extreme onto the idea of like prolonged exposure. So if you're keeping a player in that excited state for too long,
Yeah.
that's where you're starting to see issues. And so, yeah, I guess
Certainly.
you're thinking of extreme as sort of like length of time / exposure. Some emotions you can feel for much longer before feeling any sort of negative effects, and ones like anger or excitement, yeah, those time frames are typically shorter. So
Yeah.
no, that's a really an interesting something I hadn't really considered. I was very much drawn to that idea of depression and boredom as sort of the ones to avoid. But yeah, I guess that sort of fits in with that idea that I have of trying to pull the player around those emotions and not let them sit in one for too long, is that idea that it's becoming extreme in the sense of... Yeah.
Well, contrast, I think, as well. Like, keeping in mind, contrast is contrast of experience is very much, I think, what we're trying to go for. And that's where the interest curves come in as well. So you can see, the line of the sort of level of excitement, the level of arousal, the level of pleasure or pain, and you need to mix those. You need to sort of have one going. You need to be going up and down between those, probably fairly regularly throughout the game to provide that level of engagement. I think that's an interesting, like, again, coming back to engagement, that's the one that I prefer over sort of fun and things. And that's, I think it's another idea to explore, that providing, those sort of changes throughout the game is what is going to keep players engaged, and avoiding keeping them in one state too long. I think it's kind of what you were alluding to just then. Even whether it's extreme or not, I mean, you might want to be able to go to the extremes for a certain amount of time, maybe just for a fairly short time, but then bring them back and give them that relief from that situation. Yeah.
And then circling back to the point you made at the start, like, I feel so often those thoughts happen through the aesthetic choices of the game, but yeah, considering our sort of control /
agency,
thank you.
Yeah.
How can we build that into the game design and the mechanics and the things the player physically engages with, and using that to pull them through these emotions?
Yeah, I think this is a really, really interesting and useful way to think about what's going on in the game and what's going on with the player experience, modeling the player experience. So yeah, this is really cool. So fantastic. I think we'll keep I will certainly keep exploring this. Unfortunately, this couple of weeks are going to be pretty busy, but after that I'm going to be diving back into I'm doing a PhD at the moment as well, which this is kind of part of, and really get in there. There are some people have done some work in these areas. Some of it is more around the idea of creating like aesthetic agents that respond to emotion. So that's part of the research that's been done. They don't seem to have done that much on using these emotional models in the design process of the game. So I think there's maybe some green fields work to do there. So if anyone's interested in getting involved in that sort of stuff, feel free to drop me a comment or something. Happy to chat. Anything else to look at in your little Minecraft world here?
No, that's all I got.
Okay.
I think maybe in the future, if I come back to it, I might go through and try and put some more emotions down. Especially, I think what would be interesting is seeing this map from excitement down to depression and seeing what these sort of neutral states are. But probably something that will take a bit of time and a bit of research to do accurately, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring and doing some like visualization of this sort of stuff. And the blocks might be the wrong shape. I kind of wonder, because remember there was another one which was just points within the sort of grid, and those different points sort of was almost like a point cloud, and some of them with similar color, so they were likes particular emotions. That might be a more realistic, rather than these sort of discrete emotional states. They might be more flowing from one to the other.
Yeah,
I have a
for
feeling.
sure.